Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Curtains at 8. I'm Nick Lawrence. Pleased to be here with you. Pleased to be here also with Tom Habermann. Tom is, well, he works for the Opera House. He spends most of his days and nights at the Opera House doing things that you don't see how they get done. And he's also heavily involved in the Jazz Arts Foundation here in Lexington. And he's here with us tonight representing Toastmasters. And I'm not sure exactly what the synod or caucus is of Toastmasters.
Well, the Bluegrass Division, and thank you for having us here, Nick, tonight. Toastmasters is an international organization that has programs for leadership and speaking. And it's one of those organizations that really thrives on improving people's communication skills.
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm sure I've got room for improvement.
Thank you very much. Well, as you said, I'm the event manager at the Opera House. I make sure all the bells and whistles and gears of the Opera House events go in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I need to be able to delegate and lead and instruct and also receive feedback. And
so there's a lot more to this Toastmasters idea than just giving a speech.
Right.
Now
absolutely.
We're on to it.
Yeah. So my membership in Toastmasters for the last 3 years has really helped me improve my communication skills at work, not just with coworkers, but with the various audience members that come to the Opera House. As you know, we'll have a bunch of troubadour music concert series shows coming to the Opera House this fall and this January.
Yeah, you got some heavy hitters Michael's got coming in.
It's looking really good. So we'll be busy with that. But we also had WUKY Opera last week with Sweeney Todd.
Oh, that's a thriller.
And this coming weekend is the Philharmonic. Next week is the ballet. We'll have the Nutcracker. We'll have kids coming through, parents coming through. So audience members of all ages and intensities, and people that depend on services from guest services at various levels. So I need to be able to shift gears pretty well to be able to accommodate those audience members.
Remain flexible at all times.
Right. Make sure they feel like, they get a value for their dollar.
What's the wildest request you've had? Hey, Tom, can we get one of these?
Can I sit in the fire lane?
Can I sit in the fire lane?
Right. Can I put a chair in the aisle? No, you can't put a chair in the aisle. The customer isn't always right. The fire marshal is always right. But I need to be able to accommodate customers and patrons who come in and be able to fix problems so that they work for everybody.
That sounds like a pretty good endeavor.
Yeah. So membership in Toastmasters helps me do that.
Sounds good. The Opera House, while we're talking about it, is recently renovated. The seats are bigger. We had
a seat restoration a few years ago. We replaced all the seats. The seats on the floor are wider, and there's more leg room.
Goodness.
We lost seats because we wanted to make sure that people got more comfortable. There's a stigma with the Opera House seating that we'll never be able to sit there. It's too tight. We won't have any arm room, no leg room. Well, yeah, a few years ago we replaced all the seats there. I love sitting on the aisle on the outside section because those are 23.5-inch seats. And I can spread out.
I got to remember that.
And the seats in the middle are a little bigger too, but I still love the Opera House as far as the seating goes. The balcony seats on levels 2 and 3, we couldn't do anything with because the structure is built on a terraced system.
They're probably stressed members.
Right. So
we take them out
we simply
balcony and
we replace those seats just directly without losing any seats.
Sounds good. Good. I got to see when Richard Thomas was here for the jury, or I can't remember the name of the show now.
12 Angry Men.
12 Angry Men.
Yeah, I saw that.
Mayor Jim Newberry was sitting right in front of me.
Is that right?
He's a pretty good-sized chap.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one line in there about somebody better tell the mayor.
Right.
He had a spontaneous chuckle.
Did he look around?
Yeah. He's really something.
Mm-hmm.
Introduce me to your folks here.
Well, I have some other members here from Toastmasters. To my left is Bobby Ricks. He's a distinguished Toastmaster, which is kind of the Eagle Scout of Toastmasters. There are various ranks and achievements that people get through.
You help old ladies across the street and talk to them?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Learn to sweet talk.
Is that right?
Yes, and like you said, the mic is my sweet lips.
How long you been doing this?
I've been doing Toastmasters about 18 years.
Oh, you're not a neophyte by any stretch.
I'm not new to it. And I got into it after being a teacher for 5 years. I wanted to learn different ways to speak and communicate.
Teaching?
In criminal justice and law enforcement.
Yeah.
I have a background in law enforcement, and I was teaching.
So do I, but I can't talk about it.
I was teaching at a training center. Now I teach at Midway College. And something
training center here in Lexington?
The training center in Richmond,
EKU.
The Department of Criminal Justice Training.
Right. And
also I was a trainer at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center down in Georgia.
And they're serious down there.
Yeah, they're serious. And you think, well, you can teach, you can speak, but there's a lot of different things that you learn in Toastmasters about speaking, but also confidence. Not just that, but I can attribute 2 or 3 promotions to having the confidence to go in and know how to run a meeting, know how to run an organization, things of that nature that Toastmasters will help you with. Our motto is Toastmasters is where leaders are made. And we focus on that leadership component as to having good communication skills and also to the good leadership and management skills.
That underscores what Tom said on the opener here.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
My idea in seeing that Tom was involved with Toastmasters was to have you guys come up and tell some funny stories and some really meaningful, motivational stories and all that. I think it's going to be a broader cut than that.
Oh, it's going to be fun. I think you introduced the next guest here. I think she had a great speech last night about some of her success.
Right.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Coria?
Coria.
Have to get that right. With a mark on the end?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. What are you doing with these guys?
Well, they are my friends and my fellow Toastmasters and people that I definitely learn from. I'm a newer Toastmaster.
Yeah.
And I definitely learn from these people, and I've really grown in the short amount of time I've been in Toastmasters so far.
How newer are you?
I've been in Toastmasters for about 8 months.
Yeah.
And I joined a little bit of the beginning of grad school. So I'm a grad student here at WUKY.
What area are you?
In community and leadership development in the College of Agriculture. And I did my undergrad here, too, in journalism.
Well, you sound like you've taken a little bit of everything but physics.
A little bit.
That sounds good. What prompted you to get into Toastmasters on the personal side?
On the personal side, I really was just looking for something new and something different to get into. I had been in several organizations in
got these guys?
Undergrad. I did. I got these wonderful guys.
Sorry.
And so I heard about Toastmasters at an event, and then I saw it again on meetup.com, and I went to one meeting, and as I shared last night, I was hooked from the first meeting. And so I've just been really enjoying it.
What was it that hooked you? Anything specifically? I
would say during the meeting, there's an impromptu portion of the meeting, an impromptu speaking.
Extemporaneous sort of thing?
Yes.
Make it up as you go along?
Yes.
Oh,
and I've
heard about that.
I was really intrigued by the people who presented the impromptu speeches, and I was eager to be able to participate in that myself. So I think that was probably one of the biggest things that hooked me during the first meeting.
And what was your first performance?
My first performance in the club was my icebreaker speech. So that's the number one speech that all the new Toastmasters give. And
icebreaker speech. That's pretty good.
And it's generally about yourself. And so I actually talked about my name. And my name is Coria, and I talked about how it is commonly mispronounced and just how unique it is. And so it ended up being a really interesting speech, and I think everyone in the club got to learn how to say my name. So.
Kingston Trio had a song by the name of Coria, I think. Something like that. Do you get to sing ever?
I actually do sing.
Tell me about it.
I do. I've been singing probably seriously since I was 11.
And what do you sing?
I started singing in church, and since then I still do that a lot, and I love singing like acoustic soul-type songs, and I sing a little bit of everything.
For example?
There's an artist named India Ari, and I absolutely love almost all of her songs.
Yeah.
So I sing a lot of her music.
Do you sing in the bathtub?
Sometimes I
Sing in
do.
the car?
I do sing in the car quite a bit. So I do love to sing.
I'm on the cusp of asking you to sing us a song.
We're all for that.
Yeah, I'll warm up just here in a little bit. After Tom speaks, I might be ready.
Okay.
Sounds
So.
good. Well, Tom's here. You let the cat out of the bag. Thank you, Coria. Tom, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Nick. I have to start out by saying that I'm in total awe of being here. I've been a fan of yours for at least 15 years, and to me, you are the voice of Lexington.
Wow,
so
thank
this
you.
is an amazing
Get that man
experience.
anything he wants. here's an old 20.
No, I'm very sincere about that. But my basic Toastmasters story is I'm sitting here now at age 65. I got in Toastmasters when I was 30 years old to keep from being fired. I had been asked
keep from being fired.
keep from being fired
They
or
said
from
either you-
losing my job.
Either you straighten up and learn how to talk, or we're going to get rid of you.
I was asked by my boss at an engineering conference to introduce the speaker at the conference.
Engineers are not noted for being what you call oratorical.
Yeah, well, and I certainly wasn't.
And I are one, so I understand.
Law enforcement and engineering. This is great. So I told my boss, I said, I can't do it. I said, I'll have to actually quit my job before I get up in front of that group of people. And he said, okay. I thought, okay. He was like, okay, you're fired. But he meant, okay, he would introduce the speaker that time. But he told me, he said, but Tom, he said, you got to work on your problem. Yeah. So I got in Toastmasters.
Who was this person?
That was he's in Raleigh, North Carolina, or where's Raleigh? It's North Carolina, South Carolina.
Okay.
But his name was Ken Pike, and he was the engineer out at the company that I worked for at the time that I reported to. And I was supposed to introduce the speaker at a conference of fire chiefs that we were having from around the state to talk about our industry, and I couldn't do it. I could not get up in front of that group for a minute and introduce the speaker. There was no way. I literally was going to quit my job before I did that because I had debilitating stage fright and got in Toastmasters. And by the time I had finished our basic manual, which has 10 projects in it, including the one Coria mentioned, the first one, which is the icebreaker, where we simply, in a 4 to 6 minute period, introduce ourselves to the group. By the time I'd finished that basic manual, I had transformed to where now when I attended a conference, I would sit there listening to the speaker thinking, I could do that. And after finishing a couple more...
That'll get you in trouble.
That's right.
That
So you start falling for your own PR, but that's what it's meant to me.
That is quite a story. What kind of engineering work were you doing?
I worked for precast, pre-stressed concrete companies from 1974 until...
Big in the 70s.
Yeah, very big in the 70s, yeah. And I did the business development, sales, marketing work, worked with architects and structural engineers, general contractors, structural engineers, and architects.
I started to... before I started doing radio, I had been in a technical field, and I started to farm myself out as a consultant who goes to meetings. For your firm, I will go to a meeting that you don't want to go to.
And there were a lot of those.
And I will smile, and I'll meet everybody there, get everybody's name down, and I will listen to the problems, and I'll bring back a report, and I won't agree to anything. And all you got to do is pay me for my time from portal to portal.
That worked well?
Well, I didn't do it. I did radio instead. The idea I thought was worthwhile.
Sure.
Because if you've been to many construction meetings, they can be a seance.
Yeah, and it's changed so much back in the 70s. We'd have meetings, a lot of them at the Springs or the Campbell House, and that was when you could smoke. in public.
Yeah, those were the days.
Oh my goodness, you'd walk into one of those evening meetings, and I mean, people today wouldn't be able to imagine what that was like, where the room, you could hardly see people for the smoke in there. But it seemed like everybody smoked back then.
What was it that you did the first time you got up?
The very first time.
Is that your icebreaker?
No, the very first time. Oh, you mean in Toastmasters?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was thinking back to the first time I got up before Toastmasters.
Well, give me both. Take it one at a time.
Well, my first real disaster was when I was a senior in high school.
Oh, no.
And I got up to give a book report, and
in a classroom situation?
Sorry?
Classroom
Yes,
situation?
an English class situation. Got up to do a book report, and what my fellow classmates told me later said that, I wasn't embarrassed. I was panicked. If I had been embarrassed, I would have been flushed and blushed. They said I was as white as a sheet of paper. The color had totally drained out of me.
And the sweat was rolling down your back.
Actually, I was cold because I was cold
sweat
and
rolling
white
down your back.
And I would take in a deep breath, and then I would let a little bit out with a few syllables and take another deep breath, and pretty soon I was filled up like I was going to explode.
Yeah, that's what you call tanked up with no oxygen.
Exactly. So, yeah, I didn't know there was.
It happens to singers, too.
Well, it sure happened to me, and I skipped my next class, and I went to my counselor. And I told my counselor, I said, there's no way that I'm going to be able to go on to UK this fall because of this stage fright. And I don't remember his name now. Actually, I don't even remember if it was male or female, but the counselor told me that I had two options. One, I could go to a Dale Carnegie class, or I could join Toastmasters. I'd never heard of either. But that I was too young for Toastmasters because I was 17, and you have to be 18 to become a member of Toastmasters. So I took a Dale Carnegie class, and it was fabulous.
How to win friends and influence
Exactly.
people.
I mean, I would recommend that anybody that can afford it take the Dale Carnegie class. I took it. It's 14 weeks, made the difference, and I was able to go on to UK. But then 10 years almost, or 7, 8 years passed without me having to give a presentation. And when I was asked...
Those are called the good old days.
The good old... Exactly, yeah. And so when I was asked by my boss to do that introduction, even though I had made so much progress in the Dale Carnegie class, I hadn't been practicing what I had learned. And all of that confidence was completely gone. The beauty of the Toastmasters program is that we get regular booster shots of stage time that give us the confidence that we need, and we can get that every week for as long in our lives as we want to get it. I'd still recommend and advocate that people take speech classes in college, that they take Dale Carnegie classes, take the career track seminars, all of those things.
Beats paying for therapy, doesn't it?
Well, and that's exactly. But for people that have it as bad as I did, we need that regular booster shot on almost a weekly basis, or else the fear comes back.
The fear, stage fright type fear, usually stems from a lack of preparation, and you're about ready to get shelled.
That's right.
And you get that cold flop sweat.
Yes.
Going down your center of your backbone.
Exactly.
And it's really quite something to overcome. What did you do, I guess, at the time that brought you around so that you were able to comfortably give a introduction or a speech?
Well, going every week at that time I was in an evening Toastmasters club, and we met, at that time they met for 2 hours. So going every week, and every week having a role. We don't give a speech at each someone gives a speech at each Toastmasters meeting, but each member doesn't. Usually there are 2 or 3 speeches. But we have all of these other roles.
Could be a long night if everybody did.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I remember the first time that I had to give the timers report, where we keep time so that we don't go over time. We have timing lights and a stopwatch. And all I had to do was stand up and tell the names of the people who spoke and their times. That was a stretch for me early on to even do that. I mean, getting up for the very thought of getting up was terrible. So what happens over time, and what happened for me, and I see it all the time, is that if we'll just make ourselves go and just do those little baby steps, then you start to realize that, as you said, if you're prepared, if you've given some thought to what you're going to say, you realize, I can do this. I can do this. And that's what made the difference for me.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And you have to keep going now?
I do. If I were to go 6 months without getting up in front of a group and giving a talk,
I know how it feels, brother.
It would come back. It would come back.
Right. It's an expressive thing all the way. I heard something about a mustard story.
Oh,
Bobby?
That's one of the stories that I'm working on improving. It's a story that when I was in the FBI, I was a special agent in the FBI, and back in the 1980s, you may remember.
Where were you stationed?
I was in Birmingham, Alabama.
In the 70s?
In the 80s.
In the 80s.
80s. And Birmingham was a nice place in the 80s. It was not too bad, but we had the Tylenol scare. You might remember back about 1984.
The drugstore Tylenol
there was
scare.
where somebody had put Tylenol in a cyanide into a Tylenol package,
right.
And some people went in the drugstore and bought it. So there was a big federal investigation, and Congress passed a law making it illegal to tamper with drugs or any type of food or anything like that. And
packaging.
And it was all kind of new to everybody. You might remember when you could go to the store and you could open up a aspirin and open up the bottle. There was no safety seals or anything like that. Well, we had a call one Sunday. There was a prank. Well, we didn't know it was a prank at the time, where somebody called a grocery store and said, we've put cyanide in the mustard. And we want to see it on the 10 o'clock news. Well, that was kind of a strange request, so we thought, well, we just won't report it, and we'll see what happens. And after the 10 o'clock news went off, the phone rang, and
you guys didn't do it.
Yeah, you guys didn't do it. And we got them long enough. Back then there was no caller ID, so we had the old trap and trace, and we had enough time to trace the call, and it came back to a name. We were suspecting possible terrorists, so we went out to this house, and this nice townhouse in a nice section of town, and we sat there all night wondering what we had. About daylight, me and another agent walked up to the house, and it was a little townhouse, had 3 steps up onto the stoop, little pristine flower bed on each side of the door, and we knock on the door and we show our credentials, FBI, and the guy that answers the door yells in a foreign language back into the house. And my partner and I jump off into that pristine flower bed, in which time a young lady, about 15, shows up, and we're standing there with our credentials out. And she yells back into the house for another person, and this young boy, about 14,
in a foreign language,
runs up. No, she's speaking English. It turned out that the first boy was a friend from overseas just visiting, and he happened to be sleeping on the couch when we knocked on the door. Anyway, this other boy comes running up, about 14, and he looks at us and he goes, "Is this about the mustard?" And we said, "Yeah, son, we need to talk to you. Your parents home," and his mom came out, and we talked to him, and he said that he and his buddy had called it in as a prank. So we went over to the buddy's house and told him, "Don't call your buddy. We want to go talk to him first." And again, early in the morning, knock on the door, and this boy answers the door and is, "FBI, we need to talk to you. You need to call your parents." So he calls his dad. "Dad, yeah, you need to come home. The FBI's here." "No, Dad, I'm not joking this time. It's the FBI." "Yeah, I'll put him on." And I get on, "Agent Ricks, can I help you?" And he said, "Yeah, are you really?" "Yes, I am. You need to come home." And while we were waiting, the phone rang, and it was the first boy calling his buddy to warn him. And he said, yeah, they're here. I'll talk to you in about 2 to 5 years. So they admit to what they did and everything, and they went to juvenile court, and they were given a community service, and they had to pay restitution back to the grocery store for having to clear the shelves of the mustard and everything. Well, I asked this one boy, I said, why did you pick mustard? And they said, there's no safety seal on mustard. So I had to write a report that went to the Food and Drug Administration, and I sent the report in. A few weeks later, I was walking through a grocery store, and I noticed that they had safety seals on the mustard. So, Nick, I'm the reason that you have safe mustard in this country today.
I'll tell you what.
Nice.
Bravo. Mustard has got many faces.
Oh, yes.
That sounds like a fun time. What would be the difference between what you all did in the 80s as FBI agents versus what would be going on now after all of that we've been tenderized with?
Well, back in the 80s, we were still very heavy into what we call reactive crimes. We did a lot of bank robberies, kidnappings, auto theft, theft from interstate shipment, things like that. A lot of that's been transferred over to local law enforcement now. And back then, that was a primary focus, was to work on those types of things. I was fortunate to work on a couple of top 10 fugitive cases, and I recovered 3 kidnapped kids. They were parental kidnappings, but I was able to get 3 kids returned back to the right family member, and that was kind of something that I really treasured. Today, a lot of the focus is on terrorism and turning a lot of that local crime over, but also with the terrorism, working with the local law enforcement. So not just turning the local auto theft and bank robberies and stuff that over to the local police, but also working with the local police on international and national terrorism issues. It's been a real big push, and I teach criminal justice at the college, and that's one of the things that we're working on is improving investigation skills.
There's a lot of paperwork and communication work that has been transferred from national FBI to municipalities because of computers and other means of handling the information. I'm sure that's got to have been somewhat of a change in role for you, an FBI agent.
Oh, yes. I was the old paper guys. When I was in the Bureau, we still had a lot of paper. Today, a lot of it's done on computers. And, of course, computer crimes is a big issue. I did work a computer crime case, one of the first times where a kid hacked into a NASA computer. I got to work on that case. Just had a dialer that was dialing numbers. And
what was he up to?
Oh, they were just dialing, just trying to see. Back before the internet, they would have an auto dialer on a computer that would dial and listen for another computer.
Oh,
and they were just dialing. They were from Huntsville, Alabama.
Speed dialer.
Yeah, and they were just dialing around the area trying to see what they could find, and happened to tap into the NASA computer. Nothing was harmed or anything like that, but it's just one of those things that.
I got harassed during fund drive one time here at the station, and after about the 15th call and silence and going to another number, they were going through 9600, 9601, 9602. I did a star 57, is it?
Yeah.
I did a star 57. We nailed them.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. The rest of the story has to be classified. But they were using the speed dialer to block incoming calls.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot to it. A lot to it. Coria.
Yes.
Yeah. What's this about an icebreaker? You were talking about icebreakers. Do you have an icebreaker story?
I can share one of the stories that I shared last night, and it was about, I gave several stories about my experiences when I first became a student at WUKY and what I remember. Mm-hmm. And one of the stories I gave was about how I made one of my closest friends today. She's like a sister to me. And it was my freshman year, and like I shared with everyone, I was so excited because I was finally free as a freshman, and no one was telling me what to do. No one was telling me I had to go to bed. And it was about 10:30 at night, and I was determined. I was like, I want to get out of this dorm. I want to go do something. I want to go somewhere. And so I decided to walk a block down the road.
Which dorm were you in?
I was in Blazer Hall, and actually they're getting ready to tear it down, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But it was probably one of the best dorms you could live in my opinion. So I decided to walk a block down to Qdoba, and during K-Week you get a lot of coupons and free stuff. And I had a coupon for a Qdoba burrito. It was a buy a burrito, get a burrito free. And I decided I want to go, but I need a buddy. And so I said, I'm going to stand in the lobby of the dorm, and if an interesting person walks by, I'll ask them if they want to get a burrito with me. So I was in the lobby, several people walked by, and finally this one interesting girl walked by, and she was all bundled up. She had a really big bag on her back, and she had a skirt that touched the floor. And the first thing I thought when I saw her was, this girl has got to be Pentecostal. And I grew up Pentecostal, and like I shared with them, you know a Pentecostal when you see one. You can spot them from miles away.
How can you spot them? How can you tell?
You can just tell. And the skirt was definitely one giveaway. But then there's just something about them. You could just tell. And so that was the first thing I thought. And the second thing, I was curious where she was going. It was late. She needed a buddy. So I asked her where she was going, and she was getting ready to go practice her flute in one of the band rooms. And I asked her if I could watch her practice, if she would come eat a burrito with me. So we went to Qdoba, and we never made it to the practice room that night, but we did have a wonderful long conversation over burritos, and it turned into the friendship that we have today. So I shared that story, and that's definitely one of the biggest things I remember when I think about my freshman years at UK.
And where are you now? Graduate school?
Yes, I'm in graduate school.
And you've been through 3 colleges now already.
Just one.
just one.
Just UK.
Sounds good. Great story. What do you think about all this, Tom?
Well, I wish I had some stories I could tell from college. I can't tell many of them.
I can't tell them either. I can't remember a lot of them.
That's the other problem.
Yeah. There's a fellow that, speaking of going to engineering meetings, there's a fellow who's an architect that I used to see on Monday mornings, both of us maybe a little hungover. And I'd wave to him, I'd say, "Hey, Dave, how you doing?" He says, "That was a good neck. About 20 years later, at a construction meeting for a building, the architect in charge was Day. And we figured out who each other were. So we went back and kind of covered some distance in there. Well, do you have a story, Tom?
I don't know. But the icebreaker that I told, and as you asked Coria about her icebreaker, the one that I shared 2.5 years ago, I don't think I've told the story since then. And I'll tell you, when I first joined Toastmasters 3 years ago, it took me 6 months to get to the point where I was comfortable getting in front of people and giving a 5 to 6 minute speech. Some people last 3 years without even doing a speech.
I have seen you on stage doing things.
I usually have a trumpet, though. So I get to hide behind
but
that.
But not always. I recall something with the Jazz Arts Association.
With Baja.
Baja.
Yeah.
And they were kind enough to afford me a token of appreciation, a ship's bell.
That was nice.
And I remember being on stage at Singletary Center and 2 guys trying to interview me.
Right. Joe McGillis and myself.
Yeah. He did a fine job.
And Miles Oslin, too.
Yeah, he did a fine job.
I appreciate that.
It was something. How long have you been in Toastmasters?
Well, I joined 3 years ago. I'm a charter member of the Midway Club, Midway College, chartered in fall of 2011. And as I said, it took me until February of 2012 before I gave my first big speech. And as Tom Hailey was talking about.
Were you really sort of frightened to do this sort of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Describe for me what your feelings were.
Oh, gosh. The first speech I gave, I wasn't confident enough to just wing it. I wanted my notes, but I didn't want just notes. I wanted every word out there. So I printed
a teleprompter.
I wanted to read it off the page, and that's exactly what I did. So I started basically from being a reader, like at church, reading out of the Bible or reading off the page, to a point where just a few months ago I gave 6 minutes of speech without using notes or without using any kind of visual aids at all. I was able to,
extemporaneous?
Not extemporaneous, but planned, rehearsed.
Yeah.
And I had my bullet points lined up in my mind. I had my opening paragraph kind of memorized, but it was fluid enough to where I could gauge the audience, what they might be interested in, and what I might want to curtail as I'm giving the speech. Kind of like a jazz improv.
That's one of the most difficult things around is to gauge the audience.
Yeah.
Your speech is not a speech until they have accepted it and returned some sort of notice.
Great to get feedback from a crowd.
Sounds good. Yeah. Got a little music to play. We're going to come back and talk some more. Maybe we can get some more stories.
Great.
Get a story from Coria or maybe Tom or maybe Bobby. Maybe Tom Habermann. We might do that.
Thanks, Nick.
You're listening to Curtains at 8 on WUKY. I'm Nick Lawrence. I don't know who all these people are, but we're going to find out in due course. Tom Habermann and the Toastmasters are here. Bobby Riggs. Coria, single name person like Sting. I like that. Tom, good to have you here also.
Good to be here.
Okay, sounds good. Mm-hmm. We've talked about icebreakers.
Yeah, icebreakers are the first speeches that a Toastmaster would give. It's the first prepared speech that they give in front of people. And as I was saying, I was so nervous giving my first icebreaker, I had to print it up on 2 sheets of paper and get my head buried into the lectern.
What size type?
It wasn't big enough for when I was reading it. But
I use 16 points, so I don't have to wear glasses.
16's good. That's a good size. But the story was about how I got my dog. And do you know Carl Hall? He's the director of the facility at Rupp Arena.
Yeah, I know Carl.
His daughter rescued 3 dogs, stray dogs, off a country road in Tennessee somewhere. And these were just puppies. They'd been abandoned, maybe thrown out of a truck, and just left to fend for themselves. So Carl's daughter rescued them. There's a vet in the family who took care of them, got them shots, deticked them, and cleaned them up and all that. But Carl's daughter was also headed to Afghanistan as she's in the service.
Tour of duty.
Right.
Yeah.
So she dumped the dogs off to Carl's house. Carl's here in Lexington. What am I going to do with these dogs? So he potty trained them. He and his wife took care of them in the backyard, and they've had pets before. But he posted some pictures at work, and I saw, okay, there's a few over there. I'd take a look at these dogs here. And the one that I really liked was kind of shy. She was just very timid. She didn't like people. She acted kind of like a cat. And she would curl around on the couch and just kind of sit there, and she was just kind of right there. Now, I'm allergic to cats, but dogs are no problem for me, and I really like dogs. So this little black dog, they had named her Shia because she was so timid and shy, and she didn't care for people. I don't know if she was abused in Tennessee, but I took her in for a week, gave her kind of a test drive, checked the tires and everything, and she checked out my house and got real acquainted with it, and she'd never made an accident in the house. I thought, this is great, this is perfect, I'm going to take her. But I can't get my lips around the name Shia. Shia. It's not a name that I'd ever come across, so I started calling her Sasha, and she kind of perked up at that. And she began, as I introduced Sasha to my friends, she lost that shy attitude. And I don't know if people would hear Shia because of the timid effect of the name and kind of treat her differently, but they treated her like a regular dog who liked people, and that's Sasha. That's what she does. She just loves people now. And she's acclimated to my house. She's acclimated to my friends. She's very friendly and outgoing, to the point where I have to control her a little bit.
Her down.
She's a little over enthusiastic, but that's kind of the story that I gave my Toastmaster, the story of my dog and how I got Sasha.
How long have you had Sasha?
7 years now.
Yeah? Doing okay?
Yeah, she's great. She's getting a gray beard just like mine.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, who's got a story?
Well, let me add on to something here.
Bobby, yeah.
I've always got a story, I guess, but wanted to tell us something about Toastmasters is to help people get over this fear and to help people improve. We evaluate everything. So after Tom would speak,
knowledge of results improves performance.
You get immediate feedback, and someone would be assigned to 2 to 3 minutes to then talk to Tom about his speech, and everybody's listening, so you get that joint effort of learning from others. But it's positive feedback that they can do to improve their speaking. And I think one of the things with that is, you mentioned earlier about impromptu. A lot of things are not impromptu. I know when he's going to speak that I have to come up with a few things in a few minutes, but I already know kind of an outline. Mm-hmm. And I'm ready to talk about those things. Well, did it have an opening? Did the opening catch my attention? Did the body flow with the opening, and was there a conclusion? I'm looking for little things like that would be in a speech.
Friends, Romans, countrymen.
And we like to talk about having a quote or something of that nature that would kind of get somebody's attention.
A little story, a little humor.
Right. And that's kind of where the story things come in, where you're telling a little story or something like that. I remember one time when I was a policeman, I got a call to a young lady who was developmentally challenged, and she wanted to go to a movie, and her mother wouldn't let her go, so she snuck out of the house. And her mother said, well, she's run away. And
did she go down to Cordova?
She went down. She didn't go to Cordova. No, she wasn't down there playing her flute with Coria, but I got to thinking about it, and I was a policeman in Richmond, and at that time there was a theater downtown, and she told me she'd wanted to go to this movie. So I went down to the theater and walked in and asked, and I'm asking for a lady that's dressed in a certain manner, and they said, yes, she's sitting here on the third row. And the movie was almost over. I went in and found her, and I thought, well, I don't want to spoil the movie for her, so I'll sit there and wait until the movie's over. And I got to enjoy the movie, and then when it was over, I went up and told her, said, hey, how'd you like to ride home in a police car? And she said, oh, yeah. So I took her home, and it was a good evening.
That's a pretty good line. I'm going to get some stencils and things writing on the doors. She got home safely, did she?
She got home safely.
And an escort?
Yeah, a police escort. Yeah, not many people get a police escort home like that. But let her have her time. Yeah, she had some problems, but she was not hurting anybody, and nobody was hurting her. And that was the key thing, is to keep her safe.
Sounds good. There's a lot to this Toastmaster, a lot about stories, a lot about leadership development, and I think that's what Tom was talking about.
Yes, there's another part of the program that we call table topics. Besides the prepared speeches, like as Tom and Coria have talked about having given, we practice impromptu or extemporaneous type of speaking, where we have a table topics master who that week comes up with 3 questions and will ask those questions of 3 members of the club who don't already have a major role that evening. And then that member stands up and for a minimum of 1 minute and a maximum of 2.5 minutes answers that question. So we have the opportunity with that to practice what the types of talks most of us give, a few times every day, and that's when someone asks us a question. Mm-hmm. And I thought, if you don't mind, we could demonstrate that.
We could try.
What I'll do, I'm going to ask a table topics question, and we ask the question first, and then we call on the person. So no one knows until the question has been asked. Everyone's looking at me now like, oh, I didn't know you were
sweating bullets.
Now we're trying to get membership to increase.
So we make them open-ended questions and not questions that trap people or embarrass people that require a PhD to answer. So I have a list of them here. I'm going to select one. Describe your favorite season and tell us what you like about it. Coria.
Thank you, Tom. My absolute favorite season would have to be the fall. I love it for so many different reasons. One, because I love fall fashion. I absolutely love wearing scarves and sweaters. I love boots. I also love pumpkin bread, and you get that a lot during the fall season. And anything pumpkin, really. I've even had pumpkin marshmallows, and those are delicious. And I love being able to cuddle with blankets and just everything that's fall. I love the colors on the trees, the colors outside. And also the fall is just kind of hinting the whole time of the holidays. So it's hinting, Thanksgiving's getting ready to come and Christmas is getting ready to come. There's so many things that I love about the fall. So.
Great,
I like that. I like
Then we
that.
applaud.
I especially like the hinting toward the holidays. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Well, that's pretty good, Tom.
So that's the way the table topics portion of our
You want to do another?
program
Want to do
works.
another one?
Well, sure, I can do another one.
Do another one.
All right. What is the best thing that has happened to you during the past week? And this question goes to Nick Lawrence.
Oh my! Read it again.
What is the best thing that has happened to you this week?
Wow, I have been so blessed this week. I hardly know where to start. The two happiest days in a man's life are when he buys his boat and when he sells his boat. That's not always the case. Bought the boat, third sailboat, beautiful boat. It was time for it to go. And a buyer came that really loved the boat, had cash on hand, and we transacted very quickly and very satisfactorily. And I would have to say that was one of the good things that's happened this week.
Then we give you applause.
Oh, thank you.
Good job. Thank you very much for participating.
Do one more. We got time.
Sure. All right. One more. In what era would you most like to have grown up? Tom Habermann.
Oh, boy. That's a great question. One of my techniques for stretching time is to thank the table topic question for this incredibly interesting question that stretches my imagination.
I had him read the question twice.
Yeah, you did that. The era, I guess, I would enjoy having. I would have enjoyed growing up in the Roaring '20s, and simply because of the music. I love the development of the big band era and the old timey jazz music and swing music that was popular back then. Now, of course, we get to enjoy that today, but growing up as that era developed its culture would have been really interesting to have seen it firsthand, and I would have enjoyed growing up in the 1920s.
We give you applause.
Let's
And then we would take a vote. And we would,
hit Bobby with one.
all right, sure, we'll do that.
Nobody escapes here.
What would you buy first if you won the lottery?
If I won the lottery, there's a lot of things I'd love to buy, and I guess I drive a lot, so I think about these types of things to spend my time. I would buy a condo in Gatlinburg. I love Gatlinburg. I love just the excitement of the area and going to the little things that they have there, the Ripley's Museum, and especially the aquarium. I love those types of things. Going on the rides, the go-kart rides and stuff like that. So I think I'd buy a condo down there so I could go and spend more time with that. It would also be something that my family could enjoy as well, so we could go down on the weekends and visit. Of course, if I won the lottery, I guess I could just live down there. I could just maybe, if enough money, I could buy Gatlinburg. I don't know. That's the first thing that came to mind. It would be something that I would enjoy. I love the mountains, and of course, like Coria was saying about the changes of the colors, this time of year is just gorgeous in the mountains. Looking out my office window, I'm on the second floor, and I can see across the mountains, and it is beautiful seeing the leaves change. So I think that would be something that I would want to buy.
Let's give you a hand.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I give everybody a hand. You guys are really very forthcoming. I appreciate that.
Now, Nick, he mentioned that we would actually vote on this. What we would do is it's a contest. And what we do is the 3 or 4 people that would engage in this, we then vote to see who's the best, and the winner gets a ribbon. And you wouldn't believe the competition that people like, oh, man, I can't wait till I win that ribbon.
Okay. Is there going to be a ribbon tonight?
I don't know. Somebody got one.
But the funny thing is there's the Toastmasters meeting at the club level, and sure, there are ribbons for those activities like evaluations and speeches and table topics.
This is really deep, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be. And it gets up to the area level where there are 3 or 4 clubs within each area, and there's an area contest.
Competition.
So the winners of the clubs advance to the area, and the winners of the areas advance to the division. And we had a humorous speaker give his speech last night at our open house, and it's our 90th anniversary this month for Toastmasters International.
Really?
So that's why we're here, and we're hoping to raise awareness of our activities here in Lexington and surrounding counties. But the winner of the humorous speech contest for a division goes to district in Ohio later this month. So he'll be competed. Kerry Boudreau gave his speech called True Love last night, which was hilarious. And he'll be presenting his speech at the district conference in Ohio, some suburb of Columbus, the last weekend of October. So it can get involved. And beyond that, there are international competitions as well for some of the activities. So this is a worldwide thing. Toastmasters.org has all the information about our organization and the clubs within the Lexington area.
What about contact information locally? Where can they get involved?
Locally is within, there are 11, soon to be 12
Everybody
clubs.
wants to get in on the act.
Right. Toastmasters.org has a database of all the clubs locally, so there's a search engine there.
So there are several clubs here in Lexington?
Yes.
Oh,
11. WUKY is going to charter this fall, I know. Big Blue Toastmasters. They're on the verge of chartering and getting their 20 members. But they meet on Monday nights over at the Stuckert Career Center. Monday nights at 5:30, and Coria is the president for that club. Once it charters, you'll be kind of in charge of that one, right?
Yeah.
So Monday night we have 5 or 6. We have 6 clubs that meet on Mondays, 3 on Tuesdays, 1 Wednesday, and 2 Thursday. And then there are other events over the course of various weekends, like open houses.
Can you attend other clubs' functions?
Absolutely.
As a guest of some sort?
Yep. And these clubs are open to guests just to come and visit, check it out, see what the culture is there, because each one is a little different. They all have their different personalities.
Your performances are always for members, or is it open to the public?
It's open to the public. If you want to compete in the area and division or district contests, you need to be a member in good standing. But you can always come in and watch the competitions.
Sounds good. We got to get out of here. Jim Walker, Michael Garson, better known as Free Flight. Jim is from Lexington, from Bardstown, I think it is. A little bit of fascinating rhythm for you on the way out. Tom Habermann, Bobby, Tom, Coria. I got it right finally, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you all for being a part of Curtains at 8, and thanks to everybody listening, putting up with us. We appreciate that very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
You're listening to University of Kentucky Public Radio, 91.3 WUKY in Lexington, WUKY HD1, and WUKY.org. Up next, David Dine, World Cafe, here on WUKY.